Dracula by Bram Stoker. With over 200 adaptations, Dracula may be the most adapted book. Summary of the story. Harker, an English solicitor, travels to Dracula's castle to assist with a real estate transaction. He becomes a prisoner in the castle and discovers Dracula's vampiric nature. Dracula travels to England aboard a ship, leaving a trail of death. He preys upon Lucy Westenra, a young woman engaged to Arthur Holmwood. Despite efforts by Dr. Seward and Professor Abraham Van Helsing, Lucy succumbs to Dracula's attacks and becomes a vampire. The group destroys her undead form to release her soul. The group, including Harker, his wife Mina, and others, band together under Van Helsing's leadership. Dracula begins targeting Mina, attempting to turn her into a vampire. The group pursues Dracula back to Transylvania. They destroy him in a climactic battle, ending his reign of terror. The character of Dracula was inspired in part by Vlad the Impaler, Vlad III, a 15th-century Wallachian ruler known for his brutal methods. The novel initially received mixed reviews but gained prominence after the success of stage and film adaptations. Stoker researched vampire folklore extensively, drawing on Eastern European legends and myths. Dracula remains a cornerstone of Gothic literature and a timeless exploration of fear, power, and human nature. Its influence continues to shape modern horror and pop culture. Here are some of the best movie adaptations of Dracula that have stood out for their artistry, storytelling, or unique interpretations of Bram Stoker's novel. Nosferatu, 1922. Director, F. W. Murnau. An unauthorized adaptation of Dracula, names were changed to avoid legal issues. Max Schreck's portrayal of Count Orlik is iconic, depicting the vampire as a grotesque and monstrous figure. Known for its haunting visuals, shadowy cinematography, and expressionist style, it's a masterpiece of early horror cinema. Dracula, 1931. Director, Todd Browning. Starring, Bela Lugosi as Dracula. Bela Lugosi's performance defined the archetypal image of Dracula with his charm, accent, and elegant demeanor. The film is atmospheric, with Gothic sets and a brooding tone, solidifying Dracula's place in cinematic history. Produced by Universal Pictures, it kick-started the classic Universal Monsters franchise. Horror of Dracula, 1958. Director, Terence Fisher. Starring, Christopher Lee as Dracula, Peter Cushing as Van Helsing. A Hammer horror classic, offering a more violent and sensual interpretation of Dracula. Christopher Lee's Dracula is menacing and charismatic, while Peter Cushing gives a strong performance as Van Helsing. Known for its bold use of color, Gothic atmosphere, and a balance of horror and drama. Bram Stoker's Dracula, 1992. Director, Francis Ford Coppola. Starring, Gary Oldman as Dracula, Winona Ryder as Mina, Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing, Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker. A lavish and faithful adaptation, capturing the novel's Gothic romance and horror. Gary Oldman's Dracula is complex, blending seduction, menace, and tragedy. The film is visually stunning, with intricate costumes, sets, and practical effects. Notable for its exploration of Dracula's love for Mina as a reincarnation of his past love. Nosferatu the Vampire, 1979. Director, Werner Herzog. Starring, Klaus Kinski as Count Dracula. A spiritual remake of the 1922 Nosferatu, reimagined with Herzog's signature style. Klaus Kinski delivers a chilling and tragic performance as a lonely, cursed Dracula. The film's haunting visuals, eerie atmosphere, and meditative pacing make it an art house horror classic. Dracula, 1979. Director, John Badham. Starring, Frank Langella as Dracula, Laurence Olivier as Van Helsing.
He possesses the wisdom of the ages. Mystic mankind, descended from
A romanticized portrayal of Dracula, with Frank Langella's charismatic and seductive performance. Emphasizes romance over horror, focusing on Dracula's tragic and alluring nature. Notable for its moody cinematography and emotional depth.
The story of the greatest lover who ever lived, died, and lived again.
Dracula Untold, 2014. Director, Gary Shore. Starring, Luke Evans as Dracula. A modern reimagining of Dracula's origins, blending historical fiction with supernatural horror. Focuses on the transformation of Vlad the Impaler into the legendary vampire. Offers a more action-oriented take, with stunning visuals and a sympathetic anti-hero portrayal. Dracula, Prince of Darkness, 1966. Director, Terence Fisher. Christopher Lee's return as Dracula, emphasizing his sinister presence despite having no dialogue. It remains a Hammer horror staple. Black Sunday, 1960. Director, Mario Bava. While not a direct adaptation, this Italian Gothic horror film borrows heavily from vampire lore. Its rich atmosphere and influence on subsequent vampire cinema make it significant in Dracula's broader context. Dracula 2000. Director, Patrick Lussier, a modern reinterpretation of Dracula, starring Gerard Butler. This film ties Dracula's origins to Judas Iscariot, providing a fresh theological twist to the legend. Dracula's Daughter, 1936. Director, Lambert Hillier, a sequel to the 1931 classic. This film follows the struggles of Dracula's daughter, Countess Maria Zaleska. It is an early exploration of psychological horror and themes of vampirism as a metaphor for forbidden desires. Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, 1968. Director, Freddie Francis, one of the most visually stunning entries in the Hammer Dracula series, starring Christopher Lee. This film is celebrated for its striking use of color and its mix of gothic atmosphere with psychological tension. Love at First Bite, 1979. Director, Stan Dragottai. A comedic take on Dracula's story, with George Hamilton portraying a campy, romanticized version of the vampire. This parody explores Dracula adapting to modern-day New York, providing a lighter, humorous perspective on the character. The Satanic Rites of Dracula, 1973. Director, Alan Gibson. A unique fusion of horror and spy thriller, this Hammer film features Christopher Lee's Dracula in a contemporary setting, plotting a global apocalypse. It's a bold and unconventional take on the Dracula mythos. These adaptations span various styles, from faithful recreations of the novel to creative reimaginings, each adding its unique flavor to the Dracula legend. If you're looking for horror, romance, or artistic interpretations, there's something in this list for everyone.